Welcome to a deep dive into one of World War II's most baffling and enduring mysteries, the Ghost Blimp of 1942. To understand this mystery, we must first set the stage. It was a time of global conflict, danger, and uncertainty. July 1942. The world was burning in war. The Pacific theater was tense, and military vigilance was at its peak along the American coast. Then, without warning, the mystery began with a seemingly routine patrol. Off the coast of California, a Navy blimp suddenly appeared from the fog. It drifted silently, a massive, unexpected shadow emerging from the thick coastal haze. When the Navy finally reached the airship, the scene was unsettling and bizarre. Its engines were still running. Its radio was silent. The controls were moving, the ship was operational, but no one was at the helm. The most chilling detail was the complete and inexplicable absence of the crew. And the two men inside were gone. No parachutes, no distress call, no bodies ever found. It was as if they had simply evaporated into the thick coastal fog. 80 years later, the fate of the Ghost Blimp's crew remains one of World War II's most enduring puzzles. To this day, nobody truly knows what happened aboard the Ghost Blimp. What do you think happened to the two missing sailors? The mystery of the Ghost Blimp continues. Just wartime mysteries, the missing crew of the L-8 Blimp during World War II. The story begins with a small Navy airship known as the L-8. The aircraft was called L-8. This small Navy blimp was a key part of the coastal defense during World War II. The L-8's mission sounded simple, but was critically important. A small Navy blimp used to patrol the American coast during World War II. Its patrol route was vital to securing the California shoreline. The primary objective was to maintain vigilance against potential enemy threats. Search the ocean for enemy submarines. Every member of the armed forces played a crucial role in safeguarding the nation. This mission was about more than just intelligence. It was about protecting the very coastline of America. Protect the California shoreline. The coastline was a peaceful yet vulnerable front during the war, but the ordinary patrol took an extraordinary turn. But one quiet morning, the blimp returned alone. The hours that passed without contact and the discovery of the empty blimp launched a major investigation. What happened during those missing hours became one of America's strangest wartime mysteries. To this day, the true fate of the L-8 crew remains a puzzle locked in the classified files of World War II. A story of wartime fear, vital surveillance, and an unexplained disappearance. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the American home front was gripped by immediate fear and uncertainty. Fear spread across America, shifting the nation's focus dramatically to coastal defense and security. People believed Japanese submarines could attack the mainland at any moment, creating immense pressure on the U.S. Navy. The Pacific Ocean quickly transformed into a crucial battlefield, stretching from Hawaii to the West Coast. The Pacific Ocean became a battlefield, and the U.S. military needed innovative ways to patrol the vast coastline. The Navy needed reliable, sustained, quote, eyes in the sky to detect threats lurking beneath the surface. This pressing need for surveillance led to the resurgence and importance of military blimps. That is why blimps became important. They offered a unique advantage for long-duration patrol missions. Unlike airplanes, blimps could fly slowly for hours, enabling thorough and painstaking observation. Their low and slow flight capability meant they could spot submarines hiding below the water, a task often missed by faster aircraft. One such vital airship was the L-8 Blimp, stationed at a strategic naval base on the West Coast. The L-8 Blimp was based at Treasure Island near San Francisco, perfectly positioned for Pacific patrols. Its crew had only two men, Lieutenant Ernest Cody and Ensign Charles Adams, who were responsible for the L-8. Both were experienced airmen, and both understood the dangers inherent in their critical wartime mission. As they prepared for their fateful flight, a profound and unforeseen destiny awaited them. Neither man knew they were about to enter history, not for a victory, but for one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the war. Join us as we explore what happened to the L-8 Blimp over the beautiful yet vast expanse of the San Francisco Bay. Of a vanishing act that remains unsolved, the mystery of the Ghost Blimp L-8. Our story begins on August 16, 1942, in the heart of World War II operations. The morning seemed normal, as dawn sunlight spread across the military airfield. At precisely 6:03 a.m., the L-8 Blimp lifted gently into the sky, beginning its routine flight. The mission was a routine patrol, vital for coastal defense during wartime. The crew was fully equipped, carrying life jackets, emergency supplies, and highly classified documents. The weather was perfectly clear, and the ocean below was unusually calm, promising a smooth operation. For hours, the patrol continued without alarm, everything proceeding as planned. The views from the L-8 showed nothing but calm waters, confirming a normal, uneventful patrol. The radio chatter was routine, confirming all systems were nominal and communication was stable. Then, without warning, the routine ended, plunging the mission into mystery. The ticking clock of the morning suddenly took on a dramatic, ominous tone. Suddenly, the radio began crackling with strange, unexpected messages, signaling something had gone terribly wrong. This is the mysterious story of the blimp that vanished without a trace. The morning began like any other, over the vast expanse of the open ocean. At precisely 7:50 a.m., the crew initiated their first communication of note. A radio operator focused on the frequency relayed the crew's vital observation to headquarters. The blimp crew had stumbled upon something unexpected in the water below. They radioed headquarters with an urgent report. There was an oil slick in the water. The ocean surface was marred by a spreading oil slick, dark and suspicious against the blue. The immediate speculation was unsettling. Could this be the trace of a submerged submarine? The Navy's response was swift and definitive, turning a routine flight into a mission. Headquarters ordered the crew to investigate the slick immediately, descending for a closer look. Onlookers from nearby boats watched as the massive blimp deliberately lowered itself toward the ocean's surface. What followed their descent was a sudden, jarring break in all communication. Just as they neared the oil slick, the radio signal went dead, silence. There were no more radio calls, no follow-up reports, and most alarming, no emergency signal was ever broadcast. Back at headquarters, worried faces stared at the radio equipment, which produced nothing but chilling static. The flickering lights on the control panel desperately searched for a signal that simply wasn't there. The mystery had deepened into a horrifying silence, leaving only questions behind. For almost an agonizing hour, the Navy heard only the sound of static, the blimp effectively erased. A dramatic silence fell over the search area, with only the ominous fog rolling across the water to mark where the blimp was last seen. Prepare for a true story that remains one of aviation's most unsettling mysteries, the ghost blimp. It began with something terrifying, a massive airship spotted off the California coast, clearly in distress. People along the coast watched in shock as the blimp drifted wildly and erratically, seemingly without control. This wasn't a normal flight. It was immediately clear that something was terribly wrong with the military aircraft. The huge blimp was flying low, skimming dangerously close to the ground in an uncontrolled, erratic trajectory. As it got closer, onlookers could make out a chilling detail. One door on the blimp's gondola was wide open. Adding to the ominous scene, a thick rope dangled ominously beneath the blimp, swinging freely as it moved. The uncontrolled flight eventually led to a crash, bringing the terrifying spectacle to a dramatic close. The aircraft finally crashed softly into a hillside near Daly City, coming to a momentary halt. But the blimp wasn't done moving. It bounced up again and drifted further into the residential streets. People ran in fear as the giant aircraft floated menacingly between houses and high-voltage power lines. When the Navy finally managed to secure the aircraft, they made a discovery that defied all explanation. Military personnel reached the crash site and examined the airship's gondola for the crew. The cockpit was empty, save for the controls. The scene was perfectly intact, but devoid of life. The crew of two was gone, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only an inexplicable mystery. To this day, the disappearance of the crew of the ghost blimp remains one of history's great unsolved aviation puzzles. A story of the inexplicable, a mystery of two men who seemingly vanished without a trace. It began with the discovery of a blimp, perfectly intact, yet eerily abandoned. Initial inspections revealed the aircraft was in prime working order, adding to the perplexing nature of the abandonment. The engines were still running. The radio still worked. There were no signs of mechanical failure. Close-ups of the empty cockpit showed dials still active, while loose papers fluttered gently in the cabin air currents. Crucially, the scene offered no indication of a violent struggle or forced exit. Parachutes were untouched. Life jackets were still neatly stowed inside. The crew did not take emergency gear. Even the crew's personal briefcase remained on board, suggesting a sudden, unexpected departure. The whole situation presented a chilling puzzle. How could two men simply vanish from a functioning aircraft? Nothing looked damaged enough to explain two missing men. There was no sign of distress or damage to the blimp. A slow zoom on the abandoned seats confirmed the silence. They were simply vacant. With the discovery, the formal investigation into the bizarre disappearance immediately began. Investigators meticulously searched every inch of the aircraft, seeking any clue to the crew's whereabouts. Suspenseful flashlight beams cut through the gloom inside the blimp, revealing only emptiness. It was as if the crew had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a chilling, unsolved mystery. Mystery that continues to baffle investigators, the ghost blimp. This is the story of the disappearance of two blimp crew members, leaving behind an aircraft perfectly intact but completely empty. Upon discovering the empty blimp, the Navy launched a massive search operation, immediately trying to locate the missing men. Naval ships were dispatched, scanning large swaths of the ocean in the hope of finding any trace of the crew. Simultaneously, search planes were deployed, diligently searching along the coastline and surrounding areas. Despite the extensive efforts and resources poured into the search, no bodies were ever found. The men had vanished without a trace. With no resolution, speculation began to take over. Soon, theories about what happened to the crew began spreading rapidly. One theory suggested the men accidentally fell into the ocean while checking an oil slick reported below. Others speculated they might have seen a secret enemy submarine and somehow disappeared as a result of the encounter. A darker theory claimed the crew may have been captured by an unknown force, though the circumstances made this hard to prove. However, investigators were faced with a critical problem. There was no evidence to support any of these scenarios. Crucially, there were no signs of an attack on the blimp itself, no bullet holes, no damage, and no evidence of gunfire. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, and nothing to indicate violence had occurred inside the cabin. Another strange detail confused investigators even more, something about the blimp's behavior post-disappearance. If both men had fallen out, the blimp, now significantly lighter, should have risen rapidly into the sky due to the buoyancy of the helium. Instead, the blimp drifted slowly for miles, maintaining a low altitude as if something inside was still keeping it weighted down. This contradiction, combined with the lack of evidence, meant that something cases in American aviation history, the mystery of the ghost blimp L-8. In 1942, a U.S. Navy blimp, the L-8, was found empty after an ordinary patrol. What happened to its two-man crew remains one of the greatest maritime puzzles. The official investigation into the disappearance of the crew ended without providing any conclusive answers. Ultimately, the Navy had to put forward an explanation for the public, issuing their official conclusion. The Navy concluded that the two men probably fell into the ocean while attempting to investigate something below, or perform some kind of maintenance. Many experts and historians were never fully convinced by the Navy's explanation. The evidence simply didn't add up. What made the case so perplexing was the complete lack of any physical evidence to explain the disappearance. The search yielded absolutely nothing. No bodies, no wreckage, and no final, definitive clue to the fate of the crew. The case files, though extensive, were eventually closed, leaving the mystery unresolved. Over time, the memory of the two missing men and their ghostly vessel began to fade into history. Despite the passage of decades, the story of the L-8 lives on in aviation lore. With no trace of its crew, the L-8 earned a haunting nickname, the Ghost Blimp. It remains one of the strangest and most enduring unsolved mysteries in American aviation history. The tale of the L-8 is a powerful reminder that some questions about the sea and the sky simply have no answer. The empty horizon continues to guard the secret of what truly happened on that day. The image of the unmanned airship drifting silently in the sky is etched into the minds of those who know the story. And somewhere beneath the dark Pacific waves, the final truth remains undiscovered. L-8's unsolved mystery. War creates fear. Fear creates mystery. And sometimes, history leaves behind questions with no answers. Our story begins with the L-8, a U.S. Navy airship used for submarine patrol during World War II. Two men, Lieutenant Ernest Cody and Ensign Charles Adams, entered the morning sky in 1942. But they never came home. Even now, more than 80 years later, the ghost blimp still haunts the history books. It drifts through history like a shadow over the Pacific Ocean. A silent aircraft floating over the vast ocean, beneath a glorious but somber sunset. When the L-8 was finally located, it was entirely intact, but the cockpit was empty. The crew had simply vanished. And this is a mystery that refuses to disappear. The story of the L-8 remains one of World War II's most intriguing puzzles. To this day, there are no definitive answers about what happened that morning. The fate of the L-8 crew remains unknown,